Hi guys, welcome back. Today I'll talk about the Scramble for Africa. The Scramble for Africa is considered to have occurred from approximately 1870 until the outbreak of World War I in 1914. During these years, almost all of Africa came under the control of the major European powers, including Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, Italy, Portugal, and Spain. The Scramble for Africa unfolded as a series of major events that eventually saw the African continent colonized and then divided by the major European powers. European nations were seeking large sections of territory to increase their access to resources and people. In fact, due to the rise of the factory system, the European nations were in search of territory to gain access to more resources, which could be used to develop products in their own resources. Another cause of the scramble for Africa was the view of racial superiority that Europeans expressed throughout the 19th century. More specifically, as Europeans traveled the globe and colonized different regions, they came into contact with all sorts of different indigenous people. Similar to the belief in their racial superiority, Europeans also promoted Christianity as the superior to the religious beliefs of the indigenous peoples that they encountered, including those in Africa. Christian missionaries often accompanied early explorers to the African interior, and the spread of Christianity was a key feature of European imperialism in Africa. The next cause of the scramble of Africa is the new technologies and innovations that helped the European nations to overpower different African societies. The most significant European advantage came in the form of a Maxim gun, which played a vitally important role in Europe's success in Africa. In short, the Maxim gun was a machine gun that was invented by Hiram Maxim and could fire up to 600 rounds per minute. The final cause of the scramble for Africa was the competitive nature and rivalries that existed between the major European nations in the late 19th century and early 20th century. This sense of rivalry was so intense that it eventually led to the outbreak of World War I in 1914. The first major event of the scramble for Africa was the Berlin Conference of 1884. The Berlin Conference of 1884 was called by German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck and lasted from November 15, 1884 until February 26, 1885. At the time, Germany was emerging as a colonial power in Africa, which caused tensions with the other major powers such as Britain, France, and Belgium. As a result, German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck called for the Berlin Conference as a means of reducing tensions between the European powers and determining how to divide the African continent between each other. More specifically, the Berlin Conference was made up of 40 nations in total. The goal of the Berlin Conference was to create a set of boundary lines and create a defined territory for the nations involved. What resulted was a mix of approximately 50 African states with irregular borders. African societies were not consulted in this process, and sometimes it forced African groups together that had a history of conflict. Leopold II served as the King of Belgium from 1865 until 1909 and oversaw the Belgian role in the age of imperialism and the scramble for Africa. The Congo area had valuable resources such as rubber, ivory, copper, and other raw materials. Rubber was an incredibly valuable resource at the time, and was newly invented rubber tire was being used in bicycles and early automobiles. It is important to note that he ruled over the Congo as a personal possession. As such, this means that he was responsible for it and not the country of Belgium. The other European nations granted him control over the Congo on the basis that he would help the Congolese people and carry out humanitarian work in the area. In reality, he ruled over the Congo Free State brutally, and his actions terrorized the people of the region. Another important event of the scramble for Africa was the British control over Egypt, which began in 1882. In reality, the British had begun to increase their influence in Egypt in the decade before by taking on a large financial interest in the Suez Canal. Due to the vast British Empire and its overwhelming naval power, Britain had a keen interest in controlling the Suez Canal. British imperialism in India was a key reason for British interest in Egypt, since the Suez Canal gave Britain a quicker and more direct route to its colonies from the Far East. For instance, the British began to refer to the Suez Canal as the lifeline of the British Empire. Finally, at the start of the 20th century, European imperialism in Africa erupted into two major crises, which historians consider significant to the overall history of Scramble Africa. These first included the First Moroccan Crisis and the Second Moroccan Crisis. The event that sparked the First Moroccan Crisis was a visit to Morocco by German Kaiser Wilhelm II on March 31st, 1905. Also known as the Tangier Crisis, it took place from March 1905 until May 1906 and led to increased tensions between the European powers of France and Germany. Morocco is a nation located in northwestern Africa. In the early 20th century, this region of Africa was under the influence of French imperialism. As such, France considered Morocco to be within its sphere of influence. As such, when the German Kaiser Wilhelm II arrived in Tangier, Morocco in 1905, it caused anger to erupt from France. The Second Moroccan Crisis began in April 1911 during a rebellion against the Moroccan Sultan Ibn Hafid. The people of Morocco had begun to rebel against the Sultan following accusations of torture and other terrible acts carried out by his government. The rebels were so successful that they were able to surround Abdel Hafid in his palace in the northern Moroccan city of Fez. Historians consider the two crises in Morocco to be significant causes of the eventual outbreak of World War I in 1914. However, they were also some of the last major events in the history of the Scramble for Africa. In all, the Scramble for Africa had a profound impact on the history of the world. It led to both positive and negative outcomes for the people of Europe and Africa. That's all for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.